Imagine you walk into a town and every door is open. Breakfast is still warm on the stove. A child's shoe sits in the middle of the road, and there is not a single person anywhere. No note, no signal, no goodbye, just silence where 500 lives used to be. This is not a movie. This has happened more than once. The most famous case begins in the summer of 1587 on a narrow strip of land off the coast of what is now North Carolina. Roanoke Island, a group of 115 English settlers, led by Governor John White, had come to build England's first permanent colony in the Americas. It was brutal from the start. Food ran low, tensions with neighboring Croatoan people were complicated, and White was forced to sail back to England for supplies. He left behind his daughter, his son-in-law, and his newborn granddaughter, Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas. He expected to return in a few months. It took 3 years. England was at war with Spain. Every ship was needed for battle. White finally made it back in August 1590. He landed on the island and found the settlement completely empty. Houses were standing. Personal belongings were still there. No bodies, no blood, no sign of a fight. The only clue was a single word carved into a wooden post, Croatoan. A second carving on a nearby tree read CRO, as if someone had started and been interrupted. White had told the colonists before he left that if they moved, they should carve their destination into wood. He believed Croatoan meant they had gone to live with the Croatoan people on a nearby island, now called Hatteras Island. But storms prevented him from sailing there. He never found out. He never saw his family again. The fate of the 115 settlers at Roanoke remains officially unsolved after more than 400 years. Archaeologists and historians have spent decades working on this. A research group called the First Colony Foundation has been conducting fieldwork since 2004. In 2012, researchers using ground-penetrating radar found what appeared to be artifacts buried near Hatteras Island, consistent with English colonial objects. DNA analysis of modern residents with Hatteras Island ancestry is ongoing. The leading theory today, supported by scholars including historian Lee Miller and anthropologist Scott Dawson, is that the colonists integrated with the Croatoan people and survived. Dawson, who grew up on Hatteras Island and spent years researching Croatoan history, published his conclusions in the 2020 book, The Lost Colony in Hatteras Island. He argues the colonists were not lost at all. They were adopted into a thriving community. The English could not find them because they were no longer living like English settlers. But Roanoke is not the only village that went quiet. In the winter of 1930, a fur trapper named Joe LaBelle was traveling through northern Canada near Lake Anjikuni in what is now Nunavut. He came across an Inuit village he had visited before. He expected to find familiar faces. Instead, he found abandoned kayaks, stored food, and 7 sled dogs frozen to death from starvation near the village. The people, reportedly around 30 individuals, were gone. Label reported what he found to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The story spread through newspapers across North America in November and December of 1930. But here is where the mystery becomes complicated by honesty. Researchers and journalists who later tried to verify LaBelle's account, including writer Brian Dunning in his Skeptoid podcast series, found no official RCMP records confirming a mass disappearance at Lake Anjikuni. The original newspaper reports were sensationalized, and many specific details changed between tellings. Historians now believe the story was either exaggerated by LaBelle or heavily distorted by the press. It is likely the village had simply been abandoned seasonally, as nomadic Inuit communities regularly moved to follow food sources. The dogs may have died for unrelated reasons. What made it into history books as a supernatural mystery was probably a misunderstood, ordinary migration. This pattern appears again and again. A place looks abandoned. The human mind rushes toward the dramatic answer. And careful investigation, the boring, patient, unglamorous kind, usually finds a quieter truth. For Roanoke, the evidence increasingly points towards survival and assimilation, not catastrophe. For Lake Anjikuni, it points toward bad journalism and a misread landscape. For smaller cases throughout history, the answer is usually disease, war, drought, or planned relocation. But here's the honest part. Roanoke is not solved. The first colony foundation's excavations are still in progress. No confirmed burial site has been found. No European-style building has been uncovered on Hatteras Island. Every headline that says "mystery solved" is getting ahead of the evidence. What we have are good clues, a strong leading theory, and 4 centuries of absence. Some questions stay open, not because the universe is hiding something, but because the people who knew the answer are gone, and they left behind only a word carved into wood. Croatoan. Whatever it meant, no one alive has ever heard it from the lips of someone who was there.